The day when Emil didn't like his father very much was Tuesday, August 10th. It was early in the morning of what was going to be a hot summer day when Piggy Beast skipped in the cow pasture and Emil's father made the remark about the Christmas hams. Then he went away, for that was the very day they were going to begin the rye harvest at Cattelt, and Emil's father was going to be out in the fields until nightfall. "Whatever you do, Piggy Beast," said Emil when his father had gone, "keep as thin as a whippet, and then you might be all right. But you don't know father like I do." Emil worried about Piggy Beast all day and only had the heart to play a few little tricks, which weren't very serious. He sat Ida in the old wooden trough where they watered the horses and cows and pretended it was a boat in the sea. And then he pumped the trough full of water and pretended it was a boat which was leaking badly, and Ida got soaking wet, which she thought was great fun. And next Emil fired his catapult at a bowl of rhubarb cream, which his mother had left to cool on the window-sill. He only wanted to see if he could hit it. He hadn't expected it to break, but it did. And he was glad his father was far away in the rye field. His mother only made him sit in the tool shed for a short time, partly because she felt sorry for him and partly because she wanted him to take the basket of coffee and sandwiches to the harvesters. The harvesters had their coffee in the field, because it was the custom in the whole of Lonnenberger and the whole of Smarland, and it was also the custom for children from the farms to take the basket with the hot coffee and the sandwiches to them. The Smarland children looked like angelic messengers, carrying their baskets along the winding paths that ended up in the little fields, so full of stones that you could cry. But the Smarland children didn't cry, because wild strawberries grew among the stones, and they loved wild strawberries. That day Emil and Ida set off from the home in good time, carrying the basket between them. But Emil could never go directly to a place. He always had to turn off here and there and everywhere, wherever there was anything interesting to look at. And wherever Emil went, Ida went too. One of his detours was down to a swamp where frogs could usually be found, and, just as he had expected, there was one there that day. He wanted to study it more closely. Besides, he thought, it could probably do with a change of scenery after sitting in the swamp all day. So he put it in the basket and shut the lid to keep it safe. "Well, where else can I keep it?" said Emil when Ida wondered whether the basket was the right place for it. "There's a hole in my trousers pocket. Besides, it won't be there for long. I'll soon put it back in the swamp again," said the reasonable boy. Far away in the field, Emil's father and Alfred were working away with their scythes, and behind them came Lisa and Krosamaya, gathering up the cut rye and tying it into sheaves. That was the way it was done in those days. When Emil and Ida finally appeared with the lunch, Emil's father didn't greet them as ministering angels, but lectured them for arriving so late. Didn't they know the coffee was wanted on time? "Oh, a cup of coffee would go down well now," said Alfred, trying to distract Emil's father. If you have ever been in the fields of Lonnenberger during a coffee break on a warm August day, you know how nice it can be to sit on a pile of stones, resting and chatting and drinking coffee and eating sandwiches. But Emil's father was still feeling cross, and it didn't improve matters when he picked up the basket and lifted the lid, because the frog jumped straight at him and disappeared inside his shirt, which was unbuttoned because of the heat. The little frog's feet were so cold that Emil's father shuddered all over. He swung his arms about, and alas, he knocked over the coffee pot. But Emil was there in a flash and picked it up, so that only a little of the coffee was spilt. There was no sign of the frog, because in its fright it had tried to hide deeper in Emil's father's trousers. When Emil's father felt it, he went absolutely frantic and kicked out in all directions. And unfortunately, the coffee pot was in the way again, and it got kicked over. If Emil had not been there again in a flash, there would have been a coffee break without any coffee, which would have been very sad. The frog obviously didn't like being where it was, as it slid out of Emil's father's trouser leg. Emil grabbed it, but Emil's father was still as angry as ever. He thought that the frog was one of Emil's usual tricks, but of course it wasn't. Emil had expected Lena, not his father, to open the basket, and he was quite enchanted when she saw a dear little live frog. So you see how sometimes it was rather hard for Emil, because he was blamed for playing tricks when he hadn't meant anything at all. Where did Emil's father think he was supposed to keep the frog anyway, as there were holes in both his trouser pockets? And Lena was saying, I've never seen the like of that boy for getting into mischief. And if he doesn't play them, they seem to happen on their own, because he's just because he's there. Lena had never said a truer word. The catastrophe later that same day proved it. Emil got into such trouble that I can hardly bear to tell you about it, and the whole of Lonnenberger shook their heads for a long time after.